Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I will continue looking into the 1950s and the football books for boys. The story in this video is taken from The Boys' Book of Soccer for 1959. I hope you enjoy the story, and if you do, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any future videos.
Why I Joined Manchester United by Duncan Edwards. Editor's note: Duncan Edwards wrote this article only a few days before taking off with the rest of the Manchester United team on their fateful flight to Belgrade to play Red Star in the quarterfinals of the European Cup, the flight from which he was not to return. Duncan gave me the article at the hotel in London, within a stone's throw of the headquarters of the Football Association, where the team were staying before their league match with Arsenal on the previous Saturday. The usual throng of boys with autograph albums lay in wait outside the hotel. Inside, the players looked the embodiment of health and strength, youth and life. Two were old friends of mine. Tommy Taylor had written an article for the Boys' Book of Soccer last year, and Roger Byrne the year before that. Duncan Edwards was carrying on the tradition, and now all three are dead. They died, with others, when the world-famous team known as Busby's Babes was broken by a cruel air crash. Broken, but not destroyed. Manchester United immediately rose again. The spirit, which is the main thing, survived untouched. That is why I am publishing this article just as Duncan Edwards wrote it, less than a week before he began his own brave, but unavailing fight with death. It explains why Duncan and other boy football stars chose to join Manchester United, and I think why many more youngsters in the future will choose the same.
I joined Manchester United because, well, first of all, because they asked me. It was, I thought, a great honor to be asked, immediately after leaving school, if I would like to sign on with a famous club like Manchester United. That in itself was almost a good enough reason. But to make the honor even greater, I was invited to join other clubs at the same time. Wolves were interested, and so were West Bromwich Albion and other Midland clubs. I was born and bred in the Midlands, so to them I was a local boy. But I must pause a moment to explain that all these clubs were not exactly fighting over my young body. I should hate to seem to be boasting that half the clubs in the country were begging me to sign on with them when I walked out of school on the last day of my last term. Football clubs do not chase after schoolboys quite like that. I think you've a chance to make a go of it. That was what the Manchester United scout said. The representatives of the other clubs put it in much the same way. They thought I had a chance. These clubs would give me a chance. Whether I took it or not, whether I made a go of it, was largely up to me. Time would tell. Because a boy has been capped for a few schools internationals, it does not mean that he is set fair for a football career. I had received 9 schoolboy caps and played at Wembley twice, once before I was 15. Schoolboy internationals are watched by scouts from league clubs, although boys cannot be approached until they have left school. I had a pretty good idea that I might be approached, and before I left I had resolved to try to make football my career. But why should a Midlands boy go to Manchester, when clubs like Wolves and the Albion were willing to take him on? Well, perhaps it was partly because I thought I might be better away from my home territory. But the main reason, beyond all doubt, was the reputation Manchester United had, as they still have, for bringing on youngsters. I had heard about it and read about it, and whenever I asked, I heard much the same sort of answer. Old Trafford was the place for boys. They looked after you, taught you and trained you, and gave you plenty of opportunities to show what you could do. So I went, and the first time I entered the dressing room to meet the other players on the club's books, I almost felt as if I was back at school. The place was packed with youngsters, several of them hardly older than myself. Soon I met the older players, such as there were, and I was heartened by the warm welcome they gave me. This was the first thing I discovered at Old Trafford. There was no jealousy between the older and younger players. Instead, there was a real team spirit and friendliness. Youth and experience met on equal terms. The club was well named United. I found also that there was nothing phony in those stories about the encouragement to youngsters. I was soon playing in the club's under-18 team, in which I won a medal, and only 9 months after leaving the school classroom, the big moment arrived when I was called to the manager's office, and Mr. Busby told me quietly that I had been picked for the first team. 4 other boys in their teens had made their debuts with United already that season. Outside right John Scott, centre forward Eddie Lewis, inside forward John Doherty, and outside left David Pegg. So you can see what chances there were. Our opponents were Cardiff City. We lost 1-4. That was the only time I played for the first team that season. But halfway through the next season, I won a permanent place. For this success, I owed more than anything to the man whose place I eventually took. A great international wing half. Henry Cockburn, a great player, and a wonderful friend to me. For quite a long time he was on the injured list and attended our league games only as a spectator. Regularly, when we played at home, he would come into the dressing room just before the kickoff to give me some tips about my opponent that afternoon. It would have been a fine gesture, even if his advice had been only in the form of encouragement. But it was more than that. He gave me practical tips that proved invaluable on the field of play. This was all in the Old Trafford tradition. The same thing is being done today by another great player and grand sport, outside right John Berry. And his shrewd advice is being given freely to our brilliant young right winger Ken Morgans. Now that I am nearly in the veteran class, I also am expected to help the new boys to settle down and fit into the playing staff. It's a pleasure and a privilege, for, believe me, some of the lads coming up at Old Trafford now are really top class. Ken Morgans, still in his teens, is an outstanding example of the quality of the intake that followed mine. Others, even younger, have the makings of first-rate players. At the moment they are unknown. Any time, when the opportunity occurs, and it keeps occurring at Old Trafford, they will burst into fame. Busby's babes, as the newspapers sometimes call us, do not need any advertisement from me. But if any youngster with talent has the chance to begin his career with Manchester United, if he is tempted because of what he has heard of the way youngsters are treated, but hasn't quite made up his mind, well, to him I say, don't think about it. Do it. You won't regret it, for what you've heard is true. One other word to boys who may have ideas of following a football career. You must keep at it. Keep trying to go one better than you have gone so far. When you are in your school team, you should be aiming to play for the town, then for the county, then in a school's international. Chances will not come to you if you just sit back and wait for them. I do not mean that you must be pushing or always telling people how good you are. I mean simply that you must be ambitious, seek chances, and snap them up when they come. Of course, I have been lucky. Things worked out for me wonderfully well. So well, in fact, that at the age of 18 and a half, I was actually capped for England. I shall never forget my first full international match. Not just because we won. We beat Scotland 7-2. Not just because it was only 3 years, almost to the day, since I had played on the same ground in a school's international, but also because of the way the other England players made me welcome despite of my youth. I felt the same atmosphere as at Old Trafford, although some of the players were old enough to be my father. Indeed, one of them had been playing for England before I was born. Yes, of course, that was Stanley Matthews, and it was a great honour for me to be playing in the same England team as this immortal footballer. So I have been lucky. Lucky especially to play for a club at a time when it was winning honours both at home and abroad. The club that, in 1956-57, nearly won the Cup and League double. That is for the future. I'm sure we'll pull it off.